The first round of the second round of the Democrat debates took place last night, and if anyone was watching, please write in and let me know what happened. As I understand it, the debates took place in Detroit, a city laid waste by Democrat policies. The theory seemed to be if there's anyone left in Detroit who's still voting Democrat, they'd be too stupid to understand how utterly they'd be screwed by the Democrats' policies, so the candidates won't lose any votes by proposing them. Which is a good thing, since this debate included mostly second-string candidates. This includes Bernie Sanders, who's polling at 20% of people who still think communism is a great idea and that the Soviet Union will ascend to glory just as soon as Stalin is brought back to life by the ghost of Rasputin chanting the Internationale. There's also Elizabeth Warren, who's polling at 1,024th of all the people who believe she is favored by the great spirit in the sky, who himself is voting for Trump because he enjoys the laughs. Then there's Beto O'Rourke, who is polling at 0%, but feels once he finishes apologizing for his white privilege, his poll numbers will go up, though by then the election will be over. And there's Pete Buttigieg, who is polling at 0% among African Americans, though some may vote for him on the down low. Finally, of course, there's Marianne Williamson, who is polling at a whopping 85% of all people who believe her aura is silvery white with edges of gold, representing either transcendent holiness or some old fillings in her molars she hasn't had replaced yet. This charismatic and exciting group of nonentities began the debate by greeting the public, and then suddenly I woke up and found it was 1 a.m. and I was watching an old rerun of NYPD Blue, which was pretty good, incidentally, and had a gritty realism and honesty that made it essentially the opposite of a Democrat debate. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
The world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day. Hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
It's good to be a Democrat. You go to a debate, and who shows up to ask you the tough questions? Other Democrats, namely the media. Now, Don Lemon isn't a journalist. He's not even a commentator. He's just a race-baiting talking point in a suit. But Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, biased as they are, do sometimes work in something that used to look vaguely like the profession of journalism. And to their credit, they did bring up what the Democrat candidates called conservative talking points and what the rest of us call reality. How are you going to pay for all that health care, Bernie? What do you think the border will look like once you decriminalize criminal immigration? And hey, Elizabeth Warren, if you swear not to use nuclear weapons first, won't you have to use nuclear weapons second after some of us have been departicleized by our enemies? Now, these mild injections of real life so shocked the rest of the Democrat press that they took the moderators to task. But conservative evildoer that I am, I felt there was a much bigger talking point left unspoken all night long. I felt there was one word missing from the debate, the word liberty. Adorable Looney Tune Marianne Williamson sent out a tweet yesterday, just before the debate, that said this: in 1776, our founders brought forth on this planet an extraordinary new possibility. It was the idea that people, no matter who they were, would simply have the possibility of thriving. Yeah, only not. Marianne sounds kind of like Abraham Lincoln, only without the profundity and truth. What Lincoln really said was, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Liberty, and liberty equally for all. That's what the country is supposed to be about. That's everything it's supposed to be about. Everything in the Constitution is designed to protect our liberty, the separation of powers, the enumerated powers the federal government is not supposed to go beyond, liberty in speech, liberty in religion, and the right to bear arms that we need to protect that liberty when the government, inevitably, it seems, gets hungry for more and more power. That's the whole problem with the left and with leftism. Every free thing they offer you costs you not only money, it costs you liberty. If the government can take your money and give it to someone else, they own and control your time and labor. If they can regulate every aspect of your life, they can pass laws without your consent. If the government runs health care, they get to decide how you treat yourself and ultimately who lives and dies. If they can outlaw certain kinds of speech as hate speech or as a campaign finance violation, they decide who you are and what you think. Every insult they throw at us is meant to distract us from this one important point. Racism, Islamophobia, climate denial, every single slur they hit us with is meant to take our minds off our real concern. Because it's not racist to oppose humongous government entitlements. It's a defense of liberty. It's not phobic to question restrictive tenets of a religion. It's a defense of liberty. And it's not some kind of thought crime to question whether more government power is going to do one damn thing to help whatever troubles the climate might have. We're fighting for our liberty. Too often we on the right get all wonky and practical about our ideas. We point out that Democrat programs don't work. They don't. But even if they did, they'd take our liberty. We point out that capitalism beats socialism. It does. But more important, capitalism supports and incentivizes liberty. We point out that identity politics is bigotry in disguise. It is, and it's not much of a disguise if you ask me. But more importantly, when you reduce a person to his skin color or his gender or his sexuality, you take away his individual spirit, the spirit for which liberty was made. So good for the Democrats. They've created a media bubble in which they can hide from the L word. That means it's up to us to keep the word alive, to keep saying it loud and proud, no matter what they call us, no matter what they offer us, and no matter which of their gormless nudniks tries to become president and take our liberty away. We're going to talk more about this. We'll look at the debates. We have no choice. But first, let's talk about ExpressVPN. Here is something I actually use every single day. I'm online all day, and I don't like to think about the fact that people are out there who want to steal my information. I don't have to think about it because I use ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN runs in the background of your computer or phone, and when you use the internet, just like you normally would, you downloaded this app, you click to connect it, and you're protected. I don't go online without ExpressVPN because it basically encodes your information so no one can steal it. It costs less than $7 a month and comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. It uses cutting-edge technology called Trusted Server to make sure there are no logs of what you do online. It's time to stop hackers, Big Brother, and internet companies from grabbing all your data. Take back your online privacy like I did with ExpressVPN. Protect your online activity today and find out how you can get 3 months free at expressvpn.com/Klavan. That's expressvpn.com/Klavan for 3 months free with a 1-year package. Visit expressvpn.com/Klavan to learn more. And I know you're thinking fish smells. Everybody knows how to spell Express, but how do you spell Klavan? There's no E's in Klavan. It's Klavan. So before we talk about the details of the debate, one thing I just have to point out. I should also point out we have the mailbag coming up later. Don't scream. Don't scream. All right, scream. It's wonderful. All your stop. I can't stand it anymore. All your problems will be solved. That's coming up. And I want to point out all this talk about Donald Trump, and he says this and it's racist. He says that it's racist. Whatever he says, they twist it to mean it's racist, and somehow he doesn't like black people, or he doesn't like this, he doesn't like that. But Marianne Williamson said something last night that I found incredibly offensive. This is cut number 2.
Particularly communities of color and disadvantaged communities all over this country who are suffering from environmental injustice. I assure you, I lived in Grosse Pointe. What happened in Flint would not have happened in Grosse Pointe. This is part of the dark underbelly of American society. The racism, the bigotry, and the entire conversation that we're having here tonight, if you think any of this wonkiness is going to deal with this dark psychic force of the collectivized hatred that this president is bringing up in this country, then I'm afraid that the Democrats are going to see some very dark days. We need to say it like it is. It's bigger than Flint.
I just want to say, as someone who identifies as a dark psychic force, I was deeply offended by this. Dark psychic forces, we have feelings too, and we vote. We vote, and so don't expect the dark psychic forces to show up at the ballot box if Marianne Williamson gets the nomination, which I hope she does, because she's kind of hot and she can dance, and unlike the rest of the Democrats, she's openly insane instead of just insane in her policies. So you've offended dark psychic forces like myself, and don't think we won't take it out on you, the ballot box. The debate was basically Bernie and the great white Elizabeth Warren fending off these kind of non-entities that nobody's going to vote for, nobody's heard of, who were trying to say to them that they were being too radical. So Bernie and Elizabeth were like saying, no, we're going all the way to the left. We'll take a quick look at a clip. Here's Congressman Tim Ryan from Ohio going after Bernie on health care This was much quoted because of Bernie's response. And one of the things about these debates, by the way, I don't think there should be audiences at debates because applause doesn't mean you're right and boos don't mean you're wrong. So why do we have to have them there? I don't know, but you'll hear the way this shook out. This is Ryan versus Bernie.
Can you guarantee those union members that the benefits under Medicare for All will be as good as the benefits that their representatives, their union reps, fought hard to negotiate?
Well, two things. They will be better because Medicare for All is comprehensive. It covers all health care needs for senior citizens. It will finally include dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses.
But you don't know
Second
that.
of all.
You don't know that,
Second
Bernie.
of all.
We'll come to you in a second,
I do know,
Congressman.
and I wrote the damn bill. Second of all, many of our union brothers and sisters, nobody more pro-union than me up here, are now paying high deductibles and co-payments. And when we do Medicare for All, instead of having the company putting money into health care, they can get decent wage increases, which they're not getting today.
I want to bring in Congressman Ryan to respond to what Senator Sanders has said.
Senator Sanders does not know all of the union contracts in the United States. I'm trying to explain that these union members are losing their jobs. Their wages have been stagnant. The world is crumbling around them. The only thing they have is possibly really good health care. And the Democratic message is going to be, we're going to go in, and the only thing you have left, we're going to take it, and we're going to do better. I do not think that's a recipe.
What's he talking about? These guys were out of work until Donald Trump became president. Now they're back at work again. There's virtually no unemployment in this country. How is the world crumbling around them? But that's the world the Democrats are living in. So even the guy who's Ryan at least came out for sensible policies. He had one little speech he made. This is cut 3 about how they're basically, these guys are going so far left, they're going to leave the building.
Now, in this discussion already tonight, we've talked about taking private health insurance away from union members in the industrial Midwest. We've talked about decriminalizing the border, and we've talked about giving free health care to undocumented workers when so many Americans are struggling to pay for their health care. I, quite frankly, don't think that is an agenda that we can move forward on and win. We've got to talk about the working class issues, the people that take a shower after work who haven't had a raise in 30 years. If we focus on them, we'll win the election.
People who take a shower. I take a shower after work. What does that mean? Anyway, what he's saying is you guys are not talking to working class people. He's right about this. He is right about it. Trump is talking to working class people. They're making the argument that with Trump's roughhousing, his rough way of talking, his almost, his belligerent way of tweeting, that he's alienating suburban women. That is their argument. And they've gone out and they've gotten some proof of that. There seems to have been some evidence of that in the midterms. They're an important vote. Trump may want to take that. Look, there seems to be a consensus on both sides that Trump is hurting himself with his tweets. I like the fact that he is breaking down these barriers that the left has put in place, but it's something to take into account. Maybe that this is true. If he's losing votes with it, that would be a terrible thing, even though we're gaining in culture, in cultural freedom, what we may be losing in votes. It's a tough choice to make, but Trump is going to have to make it. But Elizabeth Warren, bravely, I think, and straightforwardly came out in favor of the leftist agenda. She basically answered Ryan's speech by saying, no, go big or go home. It's cut 5.
I don't understand why anybody goes to all the trouble of running for president of the United States just to talk about what we really can't do and shouldn't fight for. Our biggest problem in Washington is corruption. It is giant corporations that have taken our government and that are holding it by the throat. And we need to have the courage to fight back against that. And until we're ready to do that, it's just more of the same. Well, I'm ready to get in this fight. I'm ready to win this fight.
Thank you, Senator. Congressman.
And there's no one there that, because it's all Democrats asking the questions, because it's Jake Tapper and Don Lemon, of all people. We'll get to him in a minute. But because it's Democrats asking the question, no one thinks to say to Elizabeth Warren, is there anything you think government shouldn't do? Is there any good thing that you think government shouldn't do? Is there anything that shouldn't be subsidized? Is there anything that you don't like that shouldn't be forbidden by government? Nobody will say that to her. So, big ideas and everybody's applauding, yay, and all these guys in a city destroyed by unions, destroyed by the Democrats. there's nobody to say, well, forget about the fact that it doesn't work. Wasn't this country supposed to be about freedom? Is there something in the Constitution that prevents you from doing this? Is there anything? Do you care what's in the Constitution? Does anybody want to talk about the Constitution or the founding principles? But they don't have that problem because they won't let Fox come in and talk to them. They won't let anybody who disagrees with them come in and talk with them. So, even though some of the moderators did bring some conservative arguments, no one will say to Elizabeth. The only person who said anything to Elizabeth Warren was afterwards, Chris Matthews, of all people, the leftist of leftists, at least asked her if her health care plan was going to raise taxes, and she wouldn't answer.
You guys dodged that tonight.
No, it's not a dodge. It's about
because Shane Tapper kept saying, how much of your tax is going to go up? And you'd said,
how much are your costs going to go down?
No, different question. How much will your taxes go up?
No, it's how much are your costs?
I have a
Because it's
different
how
question.
much.
This goes on and on. And the thing is, when they say it's how much it's going to cost overall, again, there's an underlying theory here. There's an underlying thesis that all the money in the country belong to them. All the money in the country belongs to them, and they're going to save money overall. But the thing is, your money is your money. Know why? You did the work for it. You spent the time for it. Your life was put into producing that wealth. So when Elizabeth Warren says, yes, but overall, we're going to save money, that's not the point. Matthews is right practically, because if your taxes are going up, that's the money you earn being taken away from you and given to somebody else. And they don't have the right to do that. And it's not right to do it. Your money is your time. And they talk about it as if you were being greedy to want what you produced to belong to you. That's not greed. It's greed if you don't give to charity. It's greed if you don't, if you're not generous with your money. But that's not being generous. That is giving them the power to decide where your money goes. And that's why Democrat socialism is just the same as socialism. That's why when Bernie says, well, it'll be democratic this time, it won't be Stalin killing you until we get to that point. But first, it'll be democratic. When he's saying that, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything because even if everybody votes to take your money away, it's still your money. They haven't got the right to do it. But there's no one there to raise these points. There's no one there to talk about liberty, to talk about founding values, to talk about what the country is supposed to be about, which is different from what Europe is supposed to be about, different from what any other country is supposed to be about. They imitate us. Why should we imitate them? They're dying. We're thriving. Why should we imitate them? But no one is there to ask those questions because they will not let them in. Let's do another one. This is Tim Ryan versus, wait a minute, I want to make sure I've got the right thing that we were talking about. Oh, and I want to get to Bullock versus Warren on immigration. This is the governor of Montana. What happened to Montana? They're electing this guy, Stephen Bullock. But at least he's trying to be at least a little bit, limited in who they allow into the country, of how much of our border they want to take away. And so here is Bullock versus Warren on immigration.
We need to expand legal immigration. We need to create a path for citizenship, not just for dreamers, but for grandmas and for people who have been working here in the farms and for students who have overstayed their visas. We need to fix the crisis at the border. And a big part of how we do that is we do not play into Donald Trump's hands. But he wants to stir up the crisis at the border because that's his overall message. If there's anything wrong in your life,
thank you, Senator Warren. Governor Bullock, your response.
But you are playing into Donald Trump's hands. The challenge isn't that it's a criminal offense to cross the border. The challenge is that Donald Trump is president and using this to rip families apart. A sane immigration system needs a sane leader. And we can do that without decriminalizing, providing health care for everyone. And it's not me saying that. That's Obama's Homeland Security Secretary that said you'll cause further problems at the border, not making it better.
Look, it matters if we say our law is that we will lock people up who come here seeking refuge, who come here seeking asylum. That is not a crime. And as Americans, what we need to do is have a sane system that keeps us safe at the border, but does not criminalize the activity of a mother fleeing here.
Thank you.
I don't understand. I don't understand when she says we need to have more immigration. We need to free up our immigration. I don't understand why that's true and why no one says to her, why? Why do we need that? Do we need more immigrants? It's all about the people coming in and about the poor people running away. And listen, I have a heart for that. I understand that we need asylum laws and we need to let people in when they are going to be killed elsewhere. Other countries should do that too. I'm not saying, shut the border. I'm not saying don't let anybody in. But why do we need to expand the border? I mean, why is it only about them? Isn't it ever about how the good for our country? They have no concept of our country. If our country is an idea, which they never talk about. They never talk about the idea of liberty. If our country is an idea of liberty, shouldn't we only let people in who share that idea, who want to be part of that idea? And shouldn't we only let that number of people in who won't threaten that idea, who won't threaten our systems, our welfare systems? You can't have an open border and a welfare state. You can only have one or the other, right? If you have a welfare state, it costs money. It means taking money away from people, which again limits their freedom. It says to them, your time, your effort, your work belong to us. It belongs to the government. And that's the problem with immigration, just letting everybody in, is it means there are more people who are going to need to take your time, your money, your work for them. And that gives the government more power. And that's what it's all about. They're talking about that. So I have to just at least take one little detour and ask the essential question. Don Lemon? I mean, they gave him, this is the guy CNN sends to question. I mean, the fact that he's on TV at all is amazing. Newsbusters put out a little montage. This is who will be at the debate. This is a little Don Lemon montage.
Oh my gosh. Nancy Pelosi is a boss.
The closest thing that we have to royalty, President Barack Obama and the First Lady Michelle Obama.
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men. There is no ban on, they had the Muslim ban. There is no white guy ban. So what do we do about that? It says it right in the name, Antifa, anti-fascism, which is what they were there fighting. Listen, there's, no organization is perfect. There was some violence.
No president has ever been charged with treason, Douglas. Do you believe the president's actions fall anywhere within that definition?
Can we still call him the leader of the United States?
The president of the United States is racist. Donald Trump calling African nations shithole countries. They want to know if they're a shithole nation. Whole countries.
Black holes.
This is who we elected president of the United States. His speech was without thought. It was without reason.
You seem very into the piercing idea. No, I don't want to touch your nipple.
That's Don. And here's the question he got asked, which really got to me. He asked this of Amy Klobuchar, I think it was.
Those Trump voters who prioritize the economy over the president's bigotry.
Well, first of all, there are people that voted for Donald Trump before that aren't racist. They just wanted a better shake in the economy. And so I would appeal to them. But I don't think anyone can justify what this president is doing. Little kids literally woke up this weekend, turned on the TV, and saw their president calling their city, the town of Baltimore, nothing more than a home for rats. And I can tell you.
That's telling the truth about Baltimore. But never mind what she said. You could almost not hear the question. The question Lemon asked was, what do you say to Trump voters who prioritize the economy over his racism? So the assumption is that Trump is racist. There's no question about it. Not, do you think that Trump is racist? Something really interesting happened yesterday. The National Archives released this really unpleasant tape of Governor Ronald Reagan, Governor of California Ronald Reagan, on the phone talking to Richard Nixon. It's October 1971. The UN has just voted to recognize communist China, and they're both ticked off about it. And Reagan calls up Nixon, and this is what he says about the UN.
Last night, I tell you, to watch that thing on television, as I did, to see those monkeys from those African countries, damn them, they're still uncomfortable wearing shoes.
Well, and then the tail wags the dog there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that's pretty ugly. He's calling these guys from the African countries monkeys, saying they're uncomfortable wearing shoes. And why the tail wags the dog, meaning why are they making rules for America? Why are they recognizing this communist, this monstrosity, which it was? And that's genuinely ugly. You can make all the excuses. In 1971, totally different time. I mean, now it's 50 years ago. It's a long time ago. People say things in private that they wouldn't say in public. He's talking about a specific people. But let's even put all that aside. Let's just say it's racism straight up. I mean, I think you could make an argument that it's different context, but still, it's an ugly thing to say about people. Let's also think about Ronald Reagan and what he did. Ronald Reagan's economy, the economy, when Reagan took over, and I remember this, okay, the economy was worse than it has ever been before or since. It was worse than the 2008 crash. It was horrible. We were waiting an hour online for gas. You could only buy gas every other day if your license plate was odd or even. There was this horrible shortage. Our guys were being held hostage, and Carter couldn't do anything about it. We had inflation. We had stagnation. It was just a terrible, terrible time. Reagan took it over, and within 2 years, he not only jump-started the economy, he gave us a good economy that lasted essentially for 25 years, a quarter of a century, almost a working life, 25 years. That Clinton economy was the Reagan economy. There's just no question about it. He gave us all that innovation. He started all this stuff. And by the way, the people who benefited most from it were single women and blacks. Blacks and single women were the two groups that benefited most from the turnaround in the economy. The weakest people were helped the most, of course, when your economy takes over, just like now. Ronald Reagan, almost single-handedly with the help of Thatcher and the Pope, brought down the Soviet Union. He was the only person, and people forget this. Again, I was there. He was the only person who said we can win the Cold War. His Secretary of State said, what do you mean? He said, I mean, we win and they lose. And he won and they lost. And he brought the Soviet Union down, freeing tens, hundreds of millions of people from the slavery of communism, breaking them out of that absolute prison of communism, that murderous prison of communism. So here's the thing. If they had released that tape before and you had heard him say that, would you give it back? Would you give that economy back? Would you give the Soviet Union back? Would you recreate that terrible threat to lives, not just the lives of the people who live there, but to all of our lives with their nuclear weapons? Were his policies more important than whatever glitches he had, whatever ugly things he said in private? We all have glitches. We all say things in private that we shouldn't say. I mean, that's part of why you're talking in private. That's part of what privacy is. Would you take away the fact that he was a man of his time with some racism in his heart? Would you take away all his achievements, all the good he did for both this country and the world because of that tape? And that's the problem with guys like Don Lemon. I mean, if you took the word racism out of Don Lemon's vocabulary, he would just sit there and stare with those cow eyes into the camera with nothing else to say. And it is the policies that matter, and it is the principles that matter, not our flaws, not our sins, because we all got them. We can all be caught out. We can all play gotcha on one another, but it is the policies. And that's why I want to end this talking about the one guy who was talking about what matters yesterday, your president and mine, Donald Trump. Donald Trump went and gave a speech about Jamestown. Yeah. He gave a speech about Jamestown, where the first British representative government was installed, basically the beginning of the colony that would become the United States. He talked very beautifully about the evil of slavery. He said it was a barbaric trade, and he said, in honor, we remember every sacred soul who suffered the horrors of slavery and the anguish of bondage. And of course, Democrats showed up and were heckling him and all this. But he ended on this note.
In our time, we must vigorously defend those cherished democratic traditions that have made our beloved republic the envy of the entire world, and it still is, as much as ever before and maybe more. Our hard-won culture of self-government must be nourished, protected, and constantly preserved. That is why we must speak out strongly against anyone who would take power away from citizens, individuals, and state governments such as yours. In America, the people will forever rule, the people will forever reign, and the people will forever be sovereign. From the first legislative assembly down to today, America has been the story of citizens who take ownership of their future and their control of their destiny. That is what self-rule is all about. Everyday Americans coming together to take action, to build, to create, to seize opportunities, to pursue the common good, and to never stop striving for greatness.
Donald Trump, flawed guy, lots of flaws, belligerent. Sometimes he says things he shouldn't. The only guy yesterday who was talking about what this country is about, liberty. I hope people heard him. I hope they still care. We got the mailbag coming up. Come to dailywire.com.